Welcome to the Maren Will Try podcast. I wasn't always a triathlete. In fact, there was a time when I couldn't even imagine swimming laps or riding my bike for hours at a time or running marathons. And I've experienced setbacks more than I can count that have made me wonder if I would ever get back to the athlete that I wanted to be. But somewhere along the way, endurance sports changed my life. If you've ever wondered whether it's too late to start or whether you're capable of achieving more than you can even imagine, this is the podcast for you. And again, this is the Maren Will Try podcast. My name is Maren Williams. I am a marathon runner, a triathlete, a content creator, and someone who believes that ordinary people are capable of achieving extraordinary things. This podcast is not about being the fastest triathlete. This podcast is about being the strongest version of yourself. I wasn't always an athlete. I played sports in school. I played volleyball, basketball, softball. I was a cheerleader for a couple of years, but I never ran in school and never did any sort of endurance sports by any means. I ran a couple of 5K races here and there, but it wasn't until 2010 a group of us from my town decided to go walk a half marathon in Columbus. And I trained for that pretty regularly because I'd never traveled that distance on foot before. And through that training process, I was really hooked. I just loved it. Like, even though we were walking, it was a challenge and it felt good. So the next year in 2011, I went back and I ran the half marathon that year and just had the time of my life. I had a blast. And from then on, I knew that this was going to be a part of my life. I ran my first full marathon in 2014, and it took me quite a while. I think it took me at least 6 hours to complete it. But I'm telling you, that was the most challenging physical thing I had ever done in my life. And throughout the training for that, I actually ended up getting a very sore hip. And I, at the time, just said, I've been working really hard for this. I'm going to go and do it anyway. And if I have to walk parts of it, I don't care. I'm just going to finish this marathon and become a marathoner. And that's exactly what I did. I traveled, it was about 3 hours to get to the particular race and finish the distance. And so I've been a marathoner since 2014, and I've been running them since with a few breaks here and there. But my PR actually was just this last April. I ran well, it's not mine, but I ran a marathon that was only about 40 minutes away, so somewhat local marathon, and ran it in 2 hours. I'm sorry, not 2 hours. Oh my goodness. Ran it in 4 hours and 19 minutes. And um, my goal really was the sub four. I do know that I could do it, but unfortunately, I was really nervous that morning, and I ended up lining up at the front of the corral. I don't know why. Don't ask me why, but I lined up at the front of the corral, and I had been put in the fastest corral behind the elite runners. And so there are thousands and thousands of people at this race. And so we take off, and these people are just like zoom going like, a 7 minute pace running. And I'm like, oh, I have to keep up with them or I'm going to get trampled. I mean, that's just the, the way it was. And so I'm like really burning all my matches in the first couple of miles until the field spread out. So Yeah, if I if I had been smart, especially since I had been put in that faster corral, if I had been smart, I would have lined up towards the back. But that will be a story for another day on the pod. But I did want to talk a little bit on this introductory episode about a few of the setbacks that I have gone through over the past almost 20 years, 25 years that I've been going through this endurance sports journey. And in 2020, just after the start of the epidemic, and it had nothing to do with the epidemic. I ended up in the hospital. And to keep a long story short, all of the vessels in my body completely clotted off. And I was in the hospital for 2 weeks on a heparin drip because of that. And after that, the treatment for what had gone wrong was to be on steroids. And I mean, high dose steroids, prednisone for long term is what they thought at the time. And also an oral chemotherapy drug. And it wasn't cancer, but what they told me was wrong. It was treated with this particular chemo drug. So not only did I completely balloon up from all of the steroids, but also like I was feeling sick all the time because of this particular other medication that I was taking. And so for years, I endured that and it was just miserable. I'll be honest, it was just awful. And finally, I had been begging one of my specialists to please let me try to wean off these medications. And finally, they let me, and I was able to like come off of them completely. And that was in 2023. So, once I got those medications out of my system and I was able to get up and move again, it felt so good. It felt great. Everything was going wonderfully. And then I took my dog outside one morning to go out, and it was a like really slushy morning in March. It was kind of slippery but muddy at the same time, like ice slush in the yard. And she was still a fairly young, like puppy at the time, little rambunctious. And she saw something, I don't know what, and she went to take off after it. And I was holding her leash, and so when she did, she yanked her leash, and down I went, and I ended up shattering my left leg in 5 different places, and that really did set me back in a multitude of ways. I didn't have to have surgery, but I had to be in a cast and non-weight bearing for several weeks. And I remember at my consult with the orthopedic surgeon, he just looked at me and said, "It's safe to say your running days are over. Like you're never going to run again." And I was so distraught and just so upset. Like, how could this have happened? It happened so fast. Like, you know, uh, I just could not believe my bad luck at the time. And I am also a physical therapist. So I decided after my cast came off that I was going to do my own rehab. I knew what to do, I knew everything that I needed to do. And I put myself to work getting back up on my feet. And I still remember the day that I was in my yard. I was actually just walking in the yard and thought, I bet I could jog a few steps. And I did. And it wasn't pretty because it had been so long since I'd done it, but I did it. And I was so proud of myself just for being able to run 3 or 4 steps, jog 3 or 4 steps. And I started going out and walking and jogging, and then just jogging easy. And then finally, in September of 2023, I got back to running. And I say finally, but I broke that leg in March and was back to running in September. So that was quite a process, not the best summer of my life, but it is an achievement and an accomplishment that I'm very proud of. In 2024, I was really getting back to running to the point where I was signing up for races again. And I had done a few more 5Ks, and I was ready to, test myself and run a half marathon. But during the process of training, I ended up injuring my Achilles, which, that was probably me being a little overzealous. But I ended up injuring my Achilles and I did not want to sit around. I had done that long enough when I broke my leg. So I decided I would find a place to go swimming and at least go swimming to keep my fitness up. And I think this story will resonate with quite a few triathletes because this is how a lot of us transitioned into triathlon is we were runners, we got injured, and we started swimming and biking. And that's exactly what happened. When I got to the pool and I started swimming, and then I got to the point where I could ride a bike, but I wasn't ready to run yet because of the Achilles. So I started riding a bike for cross training. And I just really loved the variety, like being able to do three different things, not just running so monotonous all the time. I had other sports to choose from. And I loved it, and I've been hooked on triathlon ever since. Another thing about me that some of you know and some of you don't is I have pretty severe PTSD. And again, to make a long story short, there are no medications that a person can take to just treat PTSD. There's coping skills, but there's really no like PTSD medication. And I've tried various different sleeping medications and none of them are great, and I don't want to be on anything that's addictive or going to make me feel like I'm a zombie. I want to live life. And throughout this whole like journey and finding triathlon, I've found that the really high volume of low intensity exercise and varying it between three disciplines is really helping me with my PTSD. It's been the most wonderful coping skill. It's really just been great for me. So just recently I started up a YouTube channel, and you can find me on YouTube at Maren Will Try or Maren Williams Try. And that's been really fun. I've enjoyed capturing various moments of my training and sharing my story there. But there are people out there who resonate more with podcasts and would like to listen when they're on their commute and can't really watch YouTube. So I thought, a podcast sounded like a fun idea as well. And when I was thinking about it, I realized, there are so many podcasts out there that are hosted by professional athletes, but there aren't many podcasts out there that are hosted by just an average person that you can connect with. Like we might not have the exact same story, but we have similar stories, right? We're at similar levels. I'm not telling you about my journey, to being first place on the podium at Kona, although that would be amazing. And if I can tell you about it someday, that would be great. But, I'm an athlete just like you. And there's not a lot of podcasts out there that are hosted by people like that. I'm still learning while I'm out there racing, and I'm learning from my mistakes. I learn from my failures just as much as I learn from my wins, but I'm still figuring things out. So I'm not perfect, and I don't think people really want to listen to somebody that's perfect. So that's why I'm here sharing my voice and the things that I have to say with all of you. This podcast is going to cover everything I love about endurance sports. So this is going to include topics such as running, swimming, cycling, strength training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, sports science, race recaps, maybe some behind the scenes of YouTube. And also, I'll definitely share the lessons that I'm learning along the way. Some of the races that I have signed up for or that are in my immediate future. I did qualify for the USAT, that's USA Triathlon Nationals in Milwaukee. That's actually coming up on August 8th is my race. I'll be doing the Olympic distance. And so today is July 17th. So we only have about 2.5 weeks until nationals. I'll be going to that. And then I will be doing a Ironman 70.3 this year in Augusta, Georgia. And that is September 27th. So we've got about a month and a half ish, or 2.5 months, 2.5 months actually until Augusta. So that's coming right up as well. And I'll be talking about those races and how I'm training for those as well. And my big goal that I've had on my plate all along is to do the full Ironman distance in 2027. And I haven't officially chosen a location for that. So stay tuned. But I have 3 or 4 different ones that I'm looking at, but I haven't decided for sure on any of them. So stay tuned for those. So the Maren Will Try podcast is for anyone, obviously, but especially if you are an endurance athlete or you are interested in swimming, cycling, running, strength training, if you're training for your first race, if you're curious about triathlon, or if you're a beginner, especially if you're a beginner swimmer, I have a lot to say about swimming. So if you're a beginner swimmer, stick around because I have a lot of tips to share. And if you are, around my age, if you're older than I am, if you're younger than I am, it really doesn't matter. But I do want to emphasize I'm 43 years old and it is never too late to start your journey. So I've built myself back up from my illness and my fractures, at the age of 40. So anybody, you can do it. You can start anywhere, even if you're 70 years old or 80 years old listening to this podcast. It's never too late to get back up and do just what you can for yourself, just to maintain your strength, build strength, whatever it may be. So no matter what your age is, this podcast is for you. But if you are 40 plus, I just want to emphasize it is not too late to get started. So for upcoming episodes, I do have a plan of some topics that I'm going to share with you. And I think one that you really might find interesting, and I might do this for the next episode, is to talk about how I personally learned how to swim freestyle as an adult. When I was a kid, my parents put me in swimming lessons and I knew how to stay above water, right? Like doggy paddle and breaststroke obviously is how I swam as a kid. But I was never in swimming when I was younger. So I didn't really learn the technique of swimming freestyle until just a couple of years ago. So that I think would be a great topic because honestly, I'm in the minority here when it comes to triathlon. Swimming is by far my favorite discipline, actually. And I know that most people will say running, but I love swimming. Once I got the hang of it, I love it. I have so much to say about it. So if you are struggling with the swim portion of triathlon, I have a lot to talk about for you. I do also want to talk about injury prevention. I'm a physical therapist and I just talked about having an injury, but I want to talk about how to prevent injuries as we go about our sports, and as well mental resilience. That's something that I have really had to build up here over the last 10 years or so. So I have a lot to talk about when it comes to mental toughness, and that's definitely going to be a topic for the future. I think we can also talk about, race preparation and proper fueling. We can talk nutrition, although I will emphasize that I am not a registered dietitian, so I can only speak for myself when it comes to nutrition and how I personally fuel my training. But I do think that I will share that because it is so important to fuel your training. So that's just a preview how much I'm going to emphasize that in future episodes. In closing, if you enjoyed today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you could please subscribe. I really want us to continue this journey together. You can also find me on Instagram at Maren Williams Try. That's MarenWilliamsTri. And again, you can find me on YouTube at Maren Will Try or Maren Williams Try. I'm also in the process of working on a monthly newsletter. It has not gone out yet, but I will in the future have a place where you can share your email if you'd like and get the newsletter every month. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, it is never too late to chase a dream. It is never too late to become stronger, and I will see you in the next episode.